This is day 511, the Arukh HaShulchan Yomi. Like sponsor, come and share more of the Arukh HaShulchan Yomi. Please contact me directly. We very greatly appreciate it. Today we're doing Simon Shin Yud Zayin. See base to see Vav. Okay, so I'm saying about this is stop good. Being a material nas leak or dafka. In order to be chayav for untying, you have to untie in order to tie. Such as when you rip, you only rip ripping garment, you only chayav if you ripped in order to sew afterwards. In lav or not. But the item note that the Ba'inan Dafkam Nasik, sure their intent, they seem to be inclined that you have to specifically do it on with the intent to tie it. It seems to the opinion of the Rosh and also the Ushami. Rashi Zal Kam Reish Perek Ve'Luk Shorim to Tnan. Rashi on later on was a Mishnah that says Chinshu Chayav Al Kishur Kachu Chayav Al Kishur and Kachu Chayav HaTeran. You're just like you're liable on the tying, so you're liable on the untying. Perish Rashi Tzadei Chalazon, the people who hunted the Chilazon, Nitzvachim Liprakim Matir Kishrei Shvasis Kamos. Sometimes they had to undo the knots of the nets which were already made, in order to shorten them or to extend them. So it seems that just the unlying in and of itself makes them chayiv. It's difficult to say that no, they really were going to tie them again afterwards. Rashi seems to write this elsewhere as well. It seems that way for the Rambam we saw yesterday. Somebody who undoes a wick, in other words, he undoes the wick of the what's it called? The spinning of a string is chayav. As long as he doesn't have mind to ruin that wick or that string which he's unraveling. That's what I was looking for. Unraveling. He's not African mastic. Sure, if you're going to say you only chayav when you untie in order to tie. Obviously, that there's no concept of not having a mind to ruin, because anyway, you have a mind to retie or respin or whatever the case may be. If I didn't mind to the chud chayav, so it must be that when you untie, or in that case, it seems to be unravel, unraveling your chayav, even if, although I'm not sure, maybe psil there means not in the Rambam, but the word mafri doesn't seem to make sense. I think it's unraveling a string, like we said. Unless you're ruining something. The distinction is between ripping, where it definitely is the kilkul, it has to be done in order to re-sew, as opposed to where you are undoing. Sometimes undoing itself is fixing. So according to this, we have a machlekes to the Rashi Rambam ain't sort of a matir manas likshar. By Rashi, according to Rashi Rambam, not needs to be in order to be chayiv. It does not require that you are untying in order to tie. But that's a rush. Tarich manas likshar. According to this rush, you do have to tie manas to untie manas to tie to be chayiv. Mishnah seems to be also the opinion of the Rav. Of course, the halacha notes that Rabbanan, it's also according to everybody, no matter what. The Mishnah Berurah, though, halacha also sides with the Rashi and Rambam's approach that chayiv even if it's shalom nas likshor. There's three distinctions in categories in the knots. One for which you're liable to raisa, also one for which you're exempt, but it's forbidden. Those which you're allowed to do even deliberately. According to Rambam, any permanent knot which is made to last forever, and it is a craftsman's knot. A common person cannot make such a knot. You are liable for a chatos. Any permanent knots, such as our double knots, but are not craftsman's knots, so even a regular person can tie his shoes or Maisa Uman, or if it's a Maisa Uman on the other hand, it's a craftsman, but it's not made to last. Shekush Lizman, it's only tied temporarily. Those latter categories, Potter or Velosa, exempt even though they're forbidden. Not which is not made to last. It's not a craftsman's not. It's mutter. Let's go ahead and do it deliberately as well. Somebody utilizes a knot which is meant to last. Which is the craftsman's knot. Such as the knot of camel drivers, the knot of sailors, and the knots of the strip, the straps of a shoe, the sandal, or a sandal, which are made by the leather workers, the cobblers, when they are making the shoes, etc. Have a kosher shulchan, but somebody who ties a permanent knot of eno masum, but it's not a craftsman knot, potter is exempt. Kosher shulchan beino masum, and also a temporary knot, which is also not a craftsman knot, has both leniencies. What's a kosher shulchan after tied deliberately? Ketzar, how so? If a strap became severed and you tied it, if a string became severed and you tied it, or you tied a rope onto a bucket, or you tied a muzzle for an animal, you are exempt. And so to all similars which can be made by a commoner. Any person can make it as a permanent, so therefore it's the potter. Any knot which is temporary, and you made it as a craftsman's knot, it's also but not chiv the rest. You'd have to explain what is the kesher which is not which is temporary, and what is a kesher which is not a craftsman's knot. Those are most knots, unless you're a Boy Scout or a sailor or a camel driver. You're not going to make those fancy knots. In the brackets it says it's talking about the Ram the Zesha Omru Beresh Perak Ve'iluk Shorim, the Katre Bizmama, the knots they make in muzzles, the Kitri the Katre Bastrida. I'm not sure which what that is, but now I don't remember. In any event, so Isura Ika, there's an Isser, not Chayev. Kuganki Kesha Uman, it's also craftsman's knot. Elishain Shulchan, but it's not a permanent knot. Hey, Vashitas Tatur, Shushitas Rashi ain't okay. According to Rashi in the Torah, there's no such dichotomy between craftsman's knots and commoner's knots. There's only distinction between permanent knots and temporary knots. But if it's not temporary knot, there are two subcategories. A knot which is undone every day is mutzah to make deliberately. The kesher lizman, a knot which lasts longer than that, although it's temporary, potter v'loser. You're not allowed to do it deliberately. If you did it, you're exempt. Kesher t'midi chayav chatos, and a permanent knot which lasts as ongoing basis. Your chayav chatos, you're liable to rise up in a nice umar of the knot, even if it's not a craftsman's knot. There are also machlekes about how long that is considered to be temporary versus permanent. Some people allow you to even die for longer than one day. But this is the synopsis of this approach. Any knot which is made to last permanently. You're liable and tying it, and untying it. Whether it's a craftsman's knot or a commoner's knot. One which is made to last 7 days. You're exempt, but it's forbidden. It's made to last only 1 day, but even allowed to make it deliberately akan l'shana. The words of the two require analysis. First, you say, it's Tim Lav Lola. It sounds that if it's not for permanent, it's not permanent. Potter also. It's only the Rabban. Hakamar to the Shiva Yomim Potter also. But they said for 7 days it's Potter also. Mashi Yosim is that sounds like if it's more than 7 days, Chayav it's a Doraisa. L'shiva yami pater avol asur. Also, as he said, for 7 days it's pater avol asur. Mashal area sounds explicitly as pachas resembles the chatril. But anytime less it's less than 7 days, it's mutter to go ahead and do it. Hakamar the kshaomed lachzir b'chol yom. Then he said no, only if it's meant to untie every day. Mutter chatril, then it's mutter even chatrila. Mashi is then he said asur, so it sounds like more of that is forbidden. Unfortunately, the nice Kalim have difficulty explaining him. Zayin, so says I think that the two tried to take things which are cut and dry and not subject to machlikas. The vare, the olam vare chayv chatos. If it's permanent, you're definitely chayv chatos. Ushima yamim vare potter avos. And if it's 7 days, you're definitely potter avos. When you untie every day, vare mutter chatil, it's definitely mutter to go ahead deliberately and do it. But between 7 days and permanence, the difference of opinion, as we shall see. And so too between 1 day and 7 days, there's also differences of opinion. The Torah doesn't want to get into determining these issues. Therefore, when he comes to Paskin halacha, he paskins according to the minimum lowest common denominator. Pasuk the raka, so that's only one which is made to undo every day is mutter, not was made to last longer than that. And the Sheish said they were shadows because the different opinions don't get involved in the machlekes. Rashi Sham Mavur. Rashi says the also catch Shemanim and not which you leave for a week or even 2 weeks. Potter avosar, it's your example, it's forbidden. And if you tie and untie every day, mutter to do it deliberately. Ayin Sham. There's one who wrote, which is the Beis name of Rabbeinu Peretz. The Yosim Shiviyam have a come even more than 7 days, 8 days. Her every kaima it's permanent chayav chatos. The Yesh Mishukasa those say the Chatzi Shana, half a year. Mikre Kayama, this is the name of Rabbeinu Rucham, the chayav chatos, which infers that it's less than half a year. It's only also the Rabbanan. Mishukasa the Yosim Yamechot also the Rabbanan. So those who say more than 1 day, then this is the Rabbanan. That's in the name of the Maharai, the Trumas Hadeshin, and the Arukh HaShulchan. Maharai is the Trumas Hadeshin. Ches, V'zel L'shon Rabbeinu Ramah. Ramah says, Yeshen Shekol Kasher Shein also Atzibos Yom Atzmo, any now which is not made to undo on that day itself, which adds that means within 24 hours. Mikra Shokam is called a permanent knot. So those that lean and say up to 7 days, not called permanent knot. Then here's not talking about what's considered kayama to make you liable to a carbon. And the part of us, but to raise you in status of mutter l'chatchila to pater avol aser. Vayesh mikrin servant actually yomim mutter l'chatchila. Those who are lenient, hold it up to 7 days, is mutter, go ahead literally and do it. So that's what Beis says. Ibra Golem for Yamanasa Ibra Torah and Shab. That's the Beis says to understand the Torah. It's not compelling. Yesh Chalkim saying those argue. But someone totally b'daita b'shas akshir has to do not with time length, but with his intent at the time he dies. But that also is not compelling necessarily. Nubir Halacha says that if it's a type of knot which the oilam makes it a permanent knot, you don't go after his intent, and it's also midaraisa. The Arukh HaShulchan doesn't say, as he said, he doesn't think that this is compelling. But in any event, the primary halacha is the kol kasher shein any knot which is not made to undo every day, such as knots in garments and in outer garments and in trousers, etc. I think it's right, not Ella, but Ela. Those shemidarkon she'akeshu kam yom be yosim yom echad. Those which are made to tie for 7 days or at least more than 1 day. Akapaim also kosher b'Shabbos, regardless of how to tie it on Shabbos. Also not to untie it. Anytime you're not allowed to tie it, also the untying is forbidden as well. The halacha says that if there's a mokam at sorech, you can make it that even more than 1 day is not called shel kayama. Test. Those say sheish social atir shum kasher shem shnei ksharim zel gav zeh. you shouldn't allow undo any knot, which is a double knot, one knot on top of another knot. Then it became because we don't know exactly what's called a craftsman's knot. Which you're not allowed to tie even in a temporary manner. So to untie. That's the minhag. Nevertheless, it seems in a place where there's tsar, in other words, you can't get your shoe up because there's a double knot there, and it's causing you grief. We don't have to be concerned. You're allowed to untie it. Then it's only the Rabbanan prohibition. In a place where there's anguish, they didn't apply their tsar. That which you call two knots, one on top of the other. That's when you're tying two things together, like two shoelaces. But if you made a knot on one side of a lace or a string, in other words, you're not something on itself. So you don't, even without a double knot, it becomes a permanent knot. Zeu shita Rambam, the kol kesher shuman yeshli iser, afilu eno shel kayama. It's according to Shita Rambam, that any kesher shuman is an iser, even if it's not shel kayama. We don't know what is, so since we don't know what is considered kesher uman, and maybe it was shema, maybe the definition of a kesher uman, so which is very tight. Which next question having to do ducky mode, and two double knot is very tight. With the record, and if it's one single strand, even one knot is very tight. So maybe that's the basis of Rama. Rama is saying that since we don't know the definition of a craftsman's knot, we have to assume a knot which is tight and is likely to last should be considered to be a kesher shel kayama. L'chumra. Brax says here, I am going to Avram. It's going to tell custom shem shilti yibarim. Miran yerev lashon harif shu kesher kosher so hadek hitev. It seems to be that's the tightness issue. It's very tight. The mashal shilti yibarim eno sober krama. And but it seems that from the Magay Avram, they setting up the shilti yibarim as arguing on the Ramah. Father, on the contrary, Shilti Gwarim Batzmo saying, the Shilti Gwarim himself concludes the Chen Shtei Kshurim Zad Gabzel also that this is why two knots, one on top of the other, is also because it is very tight. Ayin Shom. Machzis HaShekel wrote the same thing, and he's a commentator in Magay Avram. Ve'ez a toast, yesh kam Magay Avram. So it must be some mistake in the Magay Avram Viduk. Yud Amna Mikray Dvarim Tui, but you knew this is coming, right? Arukh HaShulchan says the basis of all this is difficult. The Imrak b'chozek totally, but only has to do with the strength of the knot. Mazda shomim ma'asum. What does that do to be a craftsman? Varei lobum l'sui has nothing to do with being a craftsman. Has to do with how strong you make the knot. Elabhidi briefing has to do with how tight or how loose. Furthermore, came from a kesher kayama ma'asuma, since they mentioned both conditions. If a kol kesher kayama is stumble b'chozek, and any the permanent knot we assume is a strong knot. How can you make a permanent knot which is loose? And Maisuman is something additional to this, the craftsman's knot. So it's obvious that a craftsman's knot is something where the making of the knot in and of itself is some craft that an untrained person cannot do. The part of an and it also doesn't seem to make sense to say that which Rambam said, that Shel Uman, which is Eno Shel Kiyama, craftsman knot, which is not a permanent knot, that it's part of an usher. Shek Hamrasa Kesher Shel Usher, that's Tzur Kol Yom, it's led by a knot which you undo every day. Right? That's which is just called a craftsman knot because it's tight. Lenny is tight in the air, the Ika Kamas Rabbi Ramah, who Shel Yesh Mekilim Dat Shiva Yomim, Mutal Dat Chila. So what the Ramah means that those, according to those are lenient, then up to 7 days it's mutter to up to 7 day knot you can deliberately make it on Shabbos. But when there are two knots on one on top of the other, then it's very much similar to a Maisa Umnus. And so too when you have a knot on a single string, moshicha or lace a string, or kshenita b'emsa when it's severed in the middle, because a tied tightly, shesh come that should be permanent. Those all are possible to aser. At least pater of aser. Also those you untie every day. There's clearly no problem. Feel because even it's tied for several days. Then when welcome Sarah go goes because place of anguish they didn't make a decree. The coach can certainly b'makom mitzvah, the place where you need to do mitzvah. Because for hey, they were explicitly the kshayim shebahen pater aval aser, not which are normally pater aval aser mut mitzvah b'makom mitzvah mutzah chatchila. Wow. Okay. So the Mishnah says, according to Rambam, it's also to make a ma'aser uman not l'chatchila, even if you're going to be untied that same day. But Allah says that according to the Rambam, if you do these things to a craftsman's knot, which he says is a strong knot which will not come out on its own, no matter how much goes on, even though you're do it every day, it's nevertheless also chatchila. Mishnah says also, according to Rashi, talks about tenura, that aser, that the only variable for them is permanent or non-permanent. It's also even b'makom mitzvah.